why is playful learning so much more efficient, or why do people learn easier through play than otherwise?
There's this funny metaphor of knowledge dripping into a person's
Yeah.
head or something like that. And some people seem to imagine that that's how learning happens, but
Mm.
obviously it doesn't work that way. One of the biggest problems in conventional education, or when education goes wrong, is that teachers fail to show students why it matters. Why are
Mm.
we doing this? Why are we learning this? What kind of relevance does it have for your life or for anything?
Both me speaking out loud what I'm thinking is already helping me understand what I'm what I actually want to say and what I think, and also your feedback, your reaction to what I say and what you say makes me learn a lot more.
Just telling people that they will fail at something does not convince them. But having people fail is very convincing. If you speak with Olympiads of any kind of sport, what you'll see in these people is that they have a very creative and playful approach of learning. And if we rob ourselves of play in whatever we're doing, then we're setting ourselves up for a boring experience in many cases, but also for less than we could get.
Hello and welcome to Corporate Culture, your podcast about cooperation and conflict at work. In this episode, I spoke with Dr. Johannes Katsarov. Johannes is an ethicist, educational scientist, and serious game designer. He studied organizational development at Heidelberg University and got his PhD in philosophy from the University of Zurich. Currently, he is the head of the Serious Game Lab at Leuphana University Lüneburg in Germany and manages a team in diverse game-based education initiatives. As a big fan of playful learning and development, I was, of course, super excited to talk to Johannes about his work and how we can use serious games and play to work better together. With Johannes, we talked about what serious games are, why it makes so much sense to play, and how to create impactful learning experiences. And it became obvious that playing does not only make many life problems a lot easier, it also makes life itself a lot more fun. Let's get the conversation started. Here's Corporate Culture with Dr. Johannes Katsarov.
I loved play as a kid and as an adolescent. I remember going on a skiing trip once with my best friend, and we spent the entire week playing board games instead of going out to ski. Um, it was just more fun for us. At the same time, if I look back, I would have enjoyed the skiing too.
Hmm.
But that was just our big passion as kids. And I actually gave up playing for quite a few years afterwards when I started studying, because it just wasn't as relevant for me at the time. And then my interest in play reemerged when I started becoming an educator,
Mhm.
because I realized that playful learning is a very powerful approach, and that's what the research shows us. So now it's become more of a vehicle for me as an interest in how can we make learning more attractive and more effective.
Mm. Mhm.
And that's where my main interest in play comes from nowadays.
Mhm. And you mentioned the example of the board game. So are you mostly looking at physical games like board games or also video games, or do you have a broad horizon and look at all kinds of games?
I actually started out developing video games,
Hmm.
serious digital games myself. And then at some point, I noticed that working with board games or role games or with Legos, for instance, are also very interesting approaches and sometimes better approaches in the
Mm.
digital games. So I think the different media that we can use with, or the different types of games, they all have their merits and drawbacks.
Hmm.
And you need to look at the context that you work with, and what games are available to see what can suit your audience best.
Yeah, yeah. When I was a kid, I also played a lot of board games. As a teenager, a lot of video games as well. Uh, but you are now especially working in the field of serious games. And maybe also for our listeners, it would be interesting to understand what is the difference between a normal, let's say, video game, like playing World of Warcraft just for fun,
Hmm.
or a serious games, which are the games that you are also working with professionally.
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's very difficult to draw a line
Hmm.
between conventional games and serious games. When we talk about serious games, what we mean usually is that we're saying they have their main purpose of these games is beyond play. It's
Hmm.
not only to engage people in a fun experience, but also there is some kind of purpose, like persuasion or research or learning. So, in a
Hmm.
narrower sense, um, I develop educational games. Other serious games are used for marketing purposes or for research purposes, for instance. Um, and we But at the same time, I think what's always really important to stress is when people play, they're always learning something. So playful learning or game-based learning is something that always takes place. If you look at World of Warcraft, for instance, it has been used in language education studies. So English teachers had kids play World of Warcraft in English and tested whether they learned English skills, and they did,
Hmm.
because suddenly they had to communicate with players around the world in a foreign language, and that really did a lot for them. And so even in my own training, I often work with games that weren't developed for serious purposes intentionally, and I use them for serious purposes.
Hmm.
So that's when your entertainment game suddenly becomes a serious game, if you like.
Yeah, yeah. So you attach some learning purpose to any game and then it becomes a serious game. Is that what
Yeah,
you're saying basically? Hmm.
yeah, exactly. So
Hmm.
one board game that I like a lot, for instance, is Pandemic. It's
Hmm.
a cooperative board game where up to four people try to save the world from four viruses, and each of you has a specialist role. And it's a great game to teach cooperation skills,
Mm.
because none of the players can solve the problems on their own, and you need to strategize as a team in order to win the game.
Hmm.
And it's a very fun experience, but it's not a serious game.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's not serious, but it is kind of you made it a serious game with the connection to the learning outcome.
Well, you can just use it in a serious context,
Hmm.
because even if you play the game in your free time with your friends, you're practicing cooperation skills.
Yeah,
You have to practice, how do we communicate with each other? You have to strategize as a team. So
yeah.
you're doing all of this, and people learn while playing it in a conventional manner. So you can take this game in an educational context, and you can use it just exactly the way it is, but then have a debriefing afterwards and look at people. So what was this experience for you? What
Hmm.
worked? What didn't work? What kinds of emotions came up? What kind of conclusions can we draw for the context that we're working in or that we're preparing for?
Hmm.
And then you can have more of a transfer where you connect the game experience with the people's practice or whatever they're studying. And that way you're making the purpose educational in a more formal sense.
Yeah, yeah. So would you say that, for example, when we play any game, is the learning taking place while playing, or is it, as you say, the debriefing part, like the reflection part, where the actual learning about the game takes place, or is it maybe both?
It's it's ideally a mixture.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, learning is learning is a very complicated topic. I mean, some of the learning in can will hopefully take place during games. So if we stay with the example of pandemic, people are learning while doing, while they try out a strategy together, they're devising a strategy. That's a learning process.
Mm-hmm.
How do we do that? How do we plan our next steps? And then they try it out and maybe they fail. Yeah, so they get this kind of experiential feedback. Whoops, this didn't work. And that's going to be a meaningful experience that's going to have an effect on how the people as a team approach next problems. And it's probably going to have a little bit of an effect on how people cooperate in general. But we
Mm-hmm.
don't know how big it is, right? It's very
Yeah,
difficult to research something like this.
yeah.
And that's but all of this happens at the level of kind of implicit learning. So how our intuitions shape. And if we really want to get if we want to use the full power of game-based education and learning, then it's very useful to combine this kind of an experience with a debriefing,
Mm-hmm.
which also helps people to understand what's going on at levels that they maybe did not notice
Mm-hmm.
while they were playing. Or in some cases, it's very important that people see that the other players had very different experiences.
Mm-hmm.
So if we stay with the example of cooperation in the pandemic game, maybe I have a player who's very bad at cooperation, trying to solve all the problems of the world on their own.
Mm-hmm.
And other players are very unhappy with this, but they're not speaking up, they're not saying anything because they are trying to be too nice and they know it's not working. And then everybody's kind of frustrated in the end. So, with this kind of an experience, we're not going to see the learning take place that we want as educators
Yeah.
because the individual who's playing on their own and then things fail, they're not necessarily going to draw the conclusion that it was their fault.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they're just going to think, well, the others should have done what I told them to, or I did great, I made great decisions. The other people made stupid decisions.
Mm-hmm.
And so, without a conversation and feedback about what worked and what didn't work, without a reflection in the group, how do we actually communicate with each other? Um, going to a meta level or something like that, we're not going to see the learning that we want to see. And
Mm-hmm.
that's where debriefing a connection with theory about good cooperation, communication patterns, that can add a lot of extra value.
Yeah, yeah, it makes sense. And talking about playing and also this whole educational context, uh, I now remembered my primary school time. It was in the 90s, and Pokemon cards became very, very popular. So everybody had Pokemon cards. And it was very interesting because some of the students in primary school who were really not good students, they had a fantastic memory of all the Pokemons. So they could easily memorize, I think the first Pokemon were around like 200 or so, the first 200 Pokemons. They could memorize all of them like without any problems. Also with all the, the mutations and the ones who belong together and everything.
Yeah.
But they were very much struggling at school or learning learning to calculate or other basic skills in primary school. Um, and that also makes me wonder, why is playful learning so much more efficient, or why do people learn easier through play than otherwise? Are there any maybe studies or scientific evidence for this?
Yeah, there's a lot of scientific evidence on that question. I think it boils down to four aspects. One aspect is playful learning activates people.
Mhm.
So, like some of the worst learning experiences are passive learning, where you just have a person standing in front of you, talking to you for an
Mhm.
hour and
Yeah.
expecting you kind of there's this funny metaphor um, of of uh, of knowledge dripping into a person's
Yeah.
head or something like that. And some people seem to imagine that that's how learning happens, but
Mm.
obviously it doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
And that's why passive learning is extremely inefficient.
Even though most of our school years probably were like this, right?
Yeah,
I don't know about you, but if I think about school, it was mostly listening to someone talking.
yes, yes. And university too,
Yeah, right.
mostly. Although we've known for more than 50 years that this style of learning, people will memorize about 2 to 5% of what they
Yeah.
heard. So this is really ineffective.
Yeah.
And activating people in the learning experience increases or multiplies the learning effects immediately. It does,
Mhm.
whether you activate them with games or with other techniques doesn't matter so much. But so activation is the first aspect. The second aspect that's super important is immersion.
Mhm.
So what you create with games is people move out of the conventional world. Uh, there's the idea of a magic circle that you enter while playing, and it goes back to Huizinga, um, a researcher from the Netherlands who worked on culture. And what the thing is with play is that people leave the world behind that they are in normally, and they focus on the playing experience, and it draws people in. And this is incredibly important in several aspects. If you just think about how many students in classes sit there nowadays with their laptops and their smartphones,
Mhm.
and it's captivating their focus.
Yeah.
So people can't concentrate on several things at the same time. We know that people's working memory is just not set up for this kind of an experience. You're trying to get three things done at the same time, you're not getting anything done.
Mm.
But many people don't see that. And if you create an immersive experience through a game, what you are doing is you're creating motivations that pull people into the game, and you're reducing the distraction from outside. So people will put their smartphones away, close their computers. They're not going to stop having conversations about other topics. If they're playing a video game at home, for instance, they're going to put on their headset, listen to the music and the dialogues like they're watching a movie,
Mhm.
concentrate fully on this experience and let it seep in. Or if you're working with a card game, like for example with Pokemon Go cards, then you have the learners are they're fully in this game experience. They're not being distracted from other things.
If you say immersive, that does that mean necessarily that you forget the world around you? That you kind of like fade out everything which is around you and focus only on the game? Or can it also mean to do two things at the same time? Or what do you mean with immersive?
It really means focusing on the game. I mean, people are not going to drop their guard completely, especially if you're working with other people or something
Yeah.
like that. Like if you're using a role game in the classroom with your students, that's people are never going to let their guard down completely. I mean, it's
Hmm.
very difficult to do this kind of stuff, and you need, as an educator, you need to create a very safe space if you
Yeah.
want to work with these kinds of techniques, so that people can actually immerse themselves in the experience and not be afraid of people ridiculing them for enacting a different role or something like
Yeah.
that, because that's going to destroy the experience completely.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Makes sense. So we
yeah,
have the activation and we have the immersion as the two first factors.
yes.
Hmm.
And the third factor is practice. So
Mm.
you're getting people to do things, not only to learn some kind of theory, but actually to use it. So you ideally you get some kind of instructions and then you apply them.
Hmm.
And just this applying things is already an activated form of learning where you are working with theoretical concepts or constructs, or you're using your theory of mind or your ideas about something and applying them in the real world. So you're testing things in a controlled form of reality.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's not just going on in your mind.
Hmm.
And we know from experience or from research that this kind of an active an enacted form of behavior is uh, is the dominant force of learning in most people.
Yeah.
There's a sub or it's a there's a subgroup of people who are in their heads and who can really just learn at a very abstract theoretical level. I'm part of that group.
Hmm.
I love reading philosophical books or just doing math for fun. But
Hmm.
most people don't like that. And applying knowledge in a realistic setting where there's some kind of meaning attached to it, where you're trying to help people or where you're trying to solve a mystery or something like that, that makes the concepts meaningful
Yeah.
and practical.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
the and one of the biggest problems in conventional education or when education goes wrong is that teachers fail to show students why it matters. Why are
Hmm.
we doing this? Why are we learning this? What kind of relevance does it have for your life or for anything? I
Hmm.
I remember asking that question to myself so often as a student. Why am I sitting here? Does this have any relevance for me?
Yeah.
Somebody
Mhm.
decided that our teacher is supposed to talk to us about the subject, and I don't get it.
Yeah.
Nowadays, it's obvious to me,
Hmm.
but as a kid or as an adolescent, it was just totally beside the point.
Mm.
And
Hmm.
and making things practical, pragmatic, putting them in a context and having people test their skills. That's the third aspect that matters a lot. And the fourth
Hmm.
aspect is experience.
Mm.
It's feedback. We know that one of the strongest drivers of learning is to see whether you got it, whether it's
Hmm.
working, what happens if you do things this way or another. And that's very often missing, especially if classes are highly theoretical. And that's what
Hmm.
games are extremely good at doing,
Yeah.
whatever you're trying to do.
Hmm. Hmm. That makes a lot of sense. Also, the third and fourth aspect, the practice and the experience. Um, I was thinking now, for example, talking to you already makes me learn about playfulness and about games in a different way than if I would just think about it myself. But both, exactly as you say, both me speaking out loud what I'm thinking is already helping me understand what I'm what I actually want to say and what I think. And also your feedback, your reaction to what I say and what you say makes me learn a lot more.
Yeah.
And I mean, the other thing you mentioned before also, really resonated with me about the practice because when I plan, for example, something, I also have to plan a lot of activities, for example, or all kinds of things to organize things in my professional life, and uh, I also tend to think a lot in advance before actually doing something. And what I realize is that whenever I start doing something, some or sometimes even most of things are turning out differently than I thought. So what you're saying, say like go into practice maybe early or at least at some point in the process, like force also the practice might also help learning faster because you might be confronted with the reality, the environment, either people or physical constraints that you might not have thought of if you just stay in your head. So for me, it makes really a lot of sense what you're saying.
Yeah, yeah, it's true. I mean, a good planning is a great thing,
Hmm.
especially if you know that you're headed for a difficult situation. And that's like as an ethics teacher, for instance, if I want to train people to confront colleagues or superiors who have bad ideas,
Hmm.
then it takes practice. So they have to imagine themselves in specific situations, how they would deal with them, what kind of arguments would be important, how to understand the perspective of the person that they're working with, and what's driving them.
Hmm.
That's all very important. But at the same time, without talking about it, without testing it, without a reflection and so on, your ideas might be pretty weak. So that's
Hmm.
why I also don't have people do this solitarily, but I have them do these kinds of things as exercises in groups, where,
Yeah.
like you're saying, we learn so much from talking to each other in this kind of an exchange.
Yeah. Yeah. And I remember we talked about this before. Uh, that sometimes very emotional experiences stick in our brains a lot more than, for example, listening to a professor for many hours. And I remember you told me also this example about intercultural learning, right? That you had this experience. Maybe you want to share it. This experience you had in an intercultural setting that made you learn a lot more, or at least that made you memorize a lot more than just reading about it or someone explaining it to you. I don't remember the example. Maybe you remember yourself.
No, I'm very happy to share it. It was one
Yeah.
of the most illuminating experiences for me, how educational games can really matter. A focus of my bachelor's program in Bremen was on intercultural communication. And
Hmm.
one day, our trainer had us sit down in a room as a group. I think we were about 30 students. And she said, "Okay, now I want all of you to close your eyes for a couple of minutes. I'm going to glue stickers on your foreheads. And I don't want you to talk during the entire exercise.
Hmm.
And your goal is to set up groups of 3 people once I'm finished applying the stickers." So sat there in kind of a waiting with closed eyes, had the experience of somebody putting 3 little stickers on my forehead. And then at some point she said, "Okay, now you're ready to go." So I
Hmm.
got up and I wanted to know, okay, so I see stickers on everybody's foreheads and they have different colors and shapes and so on. And I wanted to know immediately, what stickers do I have on my forehead? And of course, we couldn't talk with each other. So I was using language and showing it people, trying to figure out what kinds of stickers I have. And I felt super smart organizing a little group of, I think, 5 people. All of us had red stickers on our foreheads. And so I made a gigantic effort of running around the room and finding all of the people with red stickers to set up a group. And I remember that one of my best friends, um, he set up a group with two other people, and they had like their stickers just didn't fit together. I think he had like blue stickers. One of the girls had green stickers. The other one had white stickers. And I thought, like, what's going on with him? Um, and that's kind of strange. I mean, it's obvious we're the red people. We should be a group. And then the teacher started the debriefing, and we were one of the first groups that she asked. And she was like, "So, what was your experience? What kind of a group did you set up?" And we were like, "Yeah, we're the red people with the
Mhm.
red stickers." And then she asked my friend and his group how they had come up to their conclusion. And they were like, "Well, the task was just to set up groups of three people, right?" And at that moment, I realized that I had like completely failed.
Mm.
I had made gigantic efforts to set up a group of five people instead of three people. And I mean, obviously, it was a technique to show us how people use how we as people have a natural inclination to search for people who are like ourselves.
Mm.
For example, other men, other white people, and so on and so forth. And to build groups with them and to distinguish ourselves from people that are different from ourselves.
Mm. Mhm.
And for me, that was a very powerful experience of just realizing how I had fallen into this trap and actually failed at the most simple task in the world.
Yeah. And you're
Uh,
saying you failed at the task, but at the same time, it was a very successful learning experience for you, right?
yes, yeah.
Mm.
I think it was eye-opening, and just even seeing a video about other people failing at this task wouldn't have been as illuminating for me. Or
Yeah.
reading about research that shows that people do this.
Yeah.
And that's also what I see very often as an ethics teacher and trainer is just telling people that they will fail at something does not convince them. But
Mm.
having people fail is very convincing.
Yeah.
So one of the games that I have designed relating to marketing ethics, the main focus of the game is to show students that they're going to make serious ethical mistakes in
Mm.
advertising practices, and that it's normal that they'll do that if they are not informed in advance and they're not minding the most important things.
Yeah.
And it's I mean, in many ways, I think it's a frustrating experience for the students because 95% of them make serious mistakes, and in the game they experience negative consequences that could happen. Like people could really seriously get hurt, or their company could face a lawsuit.
Mm.
And it gets people thinking. And my purpose in using this game is not to make people feel bad about themselves, but to get a realistic impression about what what they know already, how competent they are, and to show them, look, even if you have the best intentions, I know this is an ethics class, and you tried to do your best and mind all of the ethical matters. If you don't recognize them in practice, then you're going to fail.
Yeah.
And suddenly the ethics class matters for people.
Mm.
And that's like one of the most frustrating things for ethics teachers. We ran a survey a couple of years ago with 100 ethics teachers across Europe. And the issue that they brought up most frequently when we asked them, what do you struggle with as a teacher, was getting students to be motivated to care about the topic in the first place.
Yeah.
And that's where this kind of a game is very effective.
Yeah. Amazing. Amazing. And I mean, I think you touched on a very important point of making mistakes and failure. And my impression is that we talk a lot about this also in companies, in teams. Yeah, it's okay to make mistakes, have this mistakes culture, all these slogans, failing forward and everything. It sounds very nice, and I also believe in this. Um, but what I also see is that in the end, people are still very much afraid of making mistakes. And just encouraging them to do mistakes, like on a cognitive level, to tell them, hey, make mistakes, uh, might not be the same as experiencing, as you say, in a game, in a safe context, experiencing a failure or a mistake themselves. It reminds me of a of a story of a good friend of mine. It was, I think, at the end of primary school or so. He was a skateboarder, and he had this idea to build a catapult, so to actually throw a stone from the ground level on his balcony with the skateboard. And what he did is to put the skateboard on a level field, put a stone on one side, and then with all his weight, he jumped on the other side of the skateboard. And what happened is that the stone fell completely into his face, right? Because
Yeah,
that's basically it's physics,
I saw that
and
happening.
it's an extreme failure, very painful one. Um, but that also taught him a lot about physics, through this exercise, through this game. He became a surgeon, by the way, later on, so maybe also an influence on his later job choice. Uh, but I think that's exactly what you're also talking about, to experience maybe not so painful, but to experience some failure yourself.
Hmm.
And probably that also helps interiorize more the learnings, I suppose.
Yeah, yeah. And it
Mm.
teaches you a lot about how to run experiments
Yeah. Mm.
in general, right?
Yeah.
So that you think about what could go wrong and how can I like avoid the biggest risks and so on.
Right.
Yeah.
I suppose the big challenge also with students is to bring them to play, right? I don't know what your experience is with that, but um, I usually work with adults, and I'm a big fan of playful methods, but I feel it's always a bit of a challenge to bring people into a playful mode, into a playful attitude. Often, I think the first reaction when they arrive is a very cautious one, very skeptical one. Um, and then for me, the whole magic is to see maybe throughout a day of workshop to find the same people at the end of the day in an extremely playful mode, extremely open, improvisational, playful. But it's not our default setting, I would say, for many people. Do you have any thoughts on that? How to make people play?
Well, I think it's the big challenge is to trigger the right emotions through the
Mm.
experiences that you create and to avoid the wrong emotions.
Hmm.
So you want people to feel safe at all times. And especially when people don't know each other in the beginning, in some cases, even especially because they know each other, there's going to be a big reluctance to play because people feel they could lose face in front of others because they could be ridiculed, because others will make fun of them, or because they're going to make mistakes and look really bad in front of others. And that's going to create a very big reluctance to play in some people. I mean, there are obviously always very outgoing people. If you think about theater students, for instance, they're going to be very open to putting themselves out there in a group and behaving in completely different ways and stuff like that. But even if that's your own, if that's the way you are yourself, you can't expect other people to do that, or you shouldn't expect other people to do that because, like you say, the default setting is that people are cautious in the beginning, and what works best is to get people to move into a playful mode smoothly.
Mm.
So through firsts. Enjoyable experiences.
Hmm.
If we take the Lego serious play approach, for instance, What you usually do with learners as a first step is that you just have them build a very simple model of a bridge, for instance. Everybody gets the same set of Legos, build any kind of bridge. It's supposed to carry a weight. And then when people have built their bridges, then everybody presents their bridge to each other. Nobody makes nasty comments. You kind of create a setting. And then sometimes the moderators will actually take a Lego elephant and test the bridges,
Mm.
applying some strength on them. And when people see their bridges break, they're like a bit shocked. But you use that as a teacher to say, well, see, look, this is also an interesting part of the experience. You're actually attached to the thing that you created. So it
Mm.
matters for you that your bridge just broke.
Yeah.
And this is an experience. And it kind of gets people into a more playful mode. It's not nobody's going to if you create this kind of atmosphere where people aren't making fun of each other and you set these kinds of standards as a moderator from the beginning, then you create these kinds of first experiences where people start enjoying it. They start opening up, being creative. They learn to express themselves in a playful manner, and they get positive feedback for it.
Yeah.
And and this positive feedback from playing reinforces openness to play.
Mm.
And I think that's the crucial thing. So what you really want to avoid is going too fast
Mhm.
with techniques that where people foresee that they could look really stupid
Yeah.
or feel really bad about themselves in one way or another.
Mm.
And even if we design serious games where people are supposed to fail, it's really very important that we do it with humor, that we also create an experience where things work well, so that it's
Yeah.
always mixed.
Yeah.
So like within the marketing game that I was talking about before, the people that really fail at the game are usually people that at some level they're also proud of themselves because they like have good marketing results and things worked very well and some of their strategies were very good and they're confident and they talk about that. And then it's like, well, in the end, I got fired, but some of the stuff that I was doing really worked.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, and so, and then of course, in the debriefing, I make sure to convey the message. In this case, failure is normal. It's
Mm.
human. We just
Mm.
can't be aware of these things in advance if we didn't learn about them,
Yeah.
which alleviates lots of the pain because that's also part of any kind of education, but experiential education is that people usually think that they're the only person experiencing certain feelings. It's like the groupthink problem. You have
Yeah.
10 people in the room and everybody is personally thinking this is a really stupid idea and nobody says anything and everybody's like, yeah, let's do it. Let's do it.
Ah,
Because they
yeah.
think they look around and everybody's, yeah, yeah, let's do this. Let's do this.
Mhm.
And then yeah, you don't have an open kind of communication because
Yeah.
everybody is afraid of speaking up.
Yeah. Which can be quite dangerous for the team as well, right? So you might move into a very wrong direction. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
Mm.
and that's also a powerful thing about working with game-based approaches or creative approaches like this, where you get people to develop a model of their own, for example, with Legos or with card games or something like that,
Yeah.
where people work for themselves. Everybody's supposed to identify a risk or a problem or a challenge or something like that, and then
Mm.
present it to other people with a model, and then you build like a joint model with the
Yeah.
Legos.
Yeah.
Then you make sure that there's not just this one idea and nobody feels like they can really object it without somebody else losing face.
Mm.
That's where there's a lot of power
Yeah.
in using gamified approaches.
Yeah. And I think also your first point about having kind of a smooth entrance into playing, I think that's such a good advice. I had another conversation with a colleague of mine, Adam Lawrence. He's also an improviser, and he was also in this podcast last year. And I did a workshop with him a couple of years ago. Uh, and at the beginning, when he was forming groups, he was saying things like, people with similar shoe colors go together, or people with similar pants go together. And at the third day, he was saying, okay, now people with similar teeth color go together. And at the third day, we were so, in a playful mode and a group, and we had a good dynamics, and it was funny. And then he was
Yeah,
asking ourselves, what if I had asked this question at the first day? Would it have been as funny? And for me, it was all such an eye opener, right? That at some point you can become more playful, you can become more, crazy improvisational, but you might lose a lot of people if you start with these kind of extremely playful things, as you say, right? To
yeah,
kind of meet people where they are and then maybe move together into a more and more playful attitude. I really
yeah.
like that example of yours as well about that. I have one more big question that I would like to ask you because we talked a lot about games in general, but I feel that there are different forms of games. There's what we usually call gamification, right? So we gamify something. My impression is that, especially in marketing, you mentioned before, also marketing is an example, or some learning platforms like Duolingo, or these kind of things where you are moved into a certain direction, and the game
Hmm.
really has a clear goal where you should go as a player. So you're rewarded for going this way, and you are
Hmm.
punished for going another way, which gives kind of a strong structure to the player. Also, video games usually work like that. Um, but then you also have this other form of playing, which you maybe call, I don't know, free play, like children play. They
Hmm.
go on a playground, and suddenly, I don't know, a little stone becomes an animal, or you become a policeman,
Yeah.
and it's a very, very free form of playing.
Hmm.
Um, is that for you all the same? Is it all games, or would you say there are different forms of games of how to play?
Yeah, I mean, from a theoretical perspective, we can draw a couple of distinctions there.
Hmm.
Um, when we speak about gamification, we kind of agree by now that it's not a game that people are playing, but you're using playful elements to spice up a normal kind of experience.
Hmm.
So, for example, Uber uses gamification to get their drivers to drive more.
Mm.
That people collect points, they can gather bonuses for taking an extra ride or for investing another 2 hours or something like that. It doesn't really turn the experience of chauffeuring people through a city into a game, but they are using these motivational mechanisms to get people to do more certain things,
Hmm.
to drive certain behaviors. And for lots of people, it works in engaging us for, like you used the Duolingo example, in regular language practice or something like that. I mean, practicing the vocabulary doesn't really become a game while you're
Hmm.
doing it, and you're not really playing, but it uses these mechanisms, for example, that you want to maintain your streak so that you go
Yeah.
back to play every day. And I know some people that have like a 1,500 day streak with Duolingo, and they're asking themselves the question, why am I doing this by now?
I also know these kind of people. I know people who are, it's a secret tip. They change their time zone. So they change to some island in the Pacific to be still on yesterday. If they forgot the to play yesterday, they will move the time zone to definitely not miss a single day. It's really crazy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, and it's great when it works for you, right?
Yeah.
And it's wonderful when it works for the people. It can turn into a problem of addiction or
Mm.
abuse when people are harming themselves or getting harmed, right? But that's another story and another
Mm.
topic. But that's just kind of the distinction between gamification and serious games lies there that the gamification isn't really having people play a game, but it's
Mm.
just applying elements of play um, to spice up some kind of experience. And if you look at a real game and distinguish it from free play, I think the main distinction is that games have rules.
Mm.
Um, usually there's usually some kind of a winning condition, but that can vary, of course. Sometimes the winning condition is just that everybody's enjoying the experience,
Mm-hmm.
and that everybody's really involved or something like that. If you think about a role play situation among children, then they are probably going to create some rules for themselves. So, okay, you get to be the mom today, but I want to be the mom tomorrow, or something like that is a
Yeah.
rule. Or you can as the mom, you get to ask me to do everything, but you don't get to punish me, you don't get to force me to eat anything, whatever, right? So
Yeah.
um, the kids or adults that engage in free play, at some point, they probably create rules for themselves and some kinds of mechanics. And that's when it turns more and more into a game and
Mm.
not just into an experience of building a castle or something like that, which
Mm-hmm.
doesn't come with rules. Just of course you're learning put how to stack bricks on each other in a structure that doesn't crash or something like that. But it's only a game if there is some kind of a rule that
Yeah.
you have to comply with.
Mm-hmm.
And when people start breaking the rules too much, then they start breaking the game.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, you can change them, and then it just becomes another game. But at the point where you start when you play chess and then you just bend the rules completely and everybody can do anything like that, it stops being a game.
Yeah.
Maybe you're still playing with the chess figures, but nobody would say that you're still playing chess or
Yeah.
even any kind of game.
Yeah. Right. Right. And would you say that playing should be about learning? So is playing really there to learn something? Or is there also another advantage or purpose of playing besides learning? So, in everyday life, for example, can playing just be a lifestyle of saying I have a playful attitude towards things I do, even though it's not a formal game. But what do you think about playing in general, besides the learning aspect?
Yeah, that's a great question. No, I don't think that you have to. I mean, what we basically say is some people would argue that playing is actually a human right, and it
Mm,
should certainly it's if we define the rights of children, then there's a unilateral agreement basically that children should have the right to play, because it's a basic need. And I would argue that adults also have a basic need of playing. Some people basically, based on their culture, negative experiences, or the ideologies of their parents, being punished for playing or being told that it's ridiculous to play, have negative attitudes towards it, and they suppress their need to play,
mm,
but they're not doing themselves a favor in doing that. And if you see, for example, fruitful partnerships, a loving relationship among parents, there's going to be some kind of level of playfulness involved.
hmm.
Um, it's not a game in
Yeah.
in the narrow sense, but it can be about making jokes or
Yeah.
calling each other cute names or something like that. Um, and and that's what makes things fun.
Yeah.
And I think there's one philosopher, I forget his name for the moment. He suggested that play is when we make simple things, or when we make things more difficult than they need to be, or more challenging in some kind of a way. I
Hmm.
think there's a lot of truth to that, because uh, so, for example, I worked many years ago. I worked on a conveyor belt building cars,
Hmm.
and we had a structure. What the engineers thought the ideal way of putting together the screws was. How do you do it quickly so that you manage to do, I don't know, 60 cars per hour or something like that? And of course, you can just do it that way. But I played with it. I always set myself challenges. How can I, how can I do this boring process? How can it be quicker? How can I win some extra time? So I tested all kinds of alternative approaches, changing the order of applying the screws or using different techniques, different hands or something like that. And I hacked the process. So
Hmm.
at some point I was so fast at my process that after every 5 cars, I could sit down and read 2 pages in a book.
Hmm.
And if I hadn't used this playful approach, I would have never learned that, but I would have also been bored to tears
Yeah.
because it was really a boring job. But
Hmm.
by using play, I made it more fun for myself. And there are so many different ways that you can play with things that are boring, right?
Yeah.
Can I
Yeah.
do it with my eyes closed if it's not dangerous, right? Can I do everything with my left hand or something like that?
Yeah.
And that's also, I think, if you speak with Olympiads of any kind of sport, what you'll see in these people is that they have a very creative and playful approach of learning and driving their performance. They
Hmm.
they engage in active experimentation. They set themselves ridiculous challenges. They do stuff where other people are just shaking their head. Why would you try something like that?
Hmm.
But it's through this experimentation and playfulness that people come up with new ideas, new approaches of doing things, better approaches, better techniques.
Yeah.
And if we rob ourselves of play in whatever we're doing, then we're setting ourselves up for a boring experience in many cases, but also for less than we could get.
Hmm. Hmm.
And that's kind of sad.
Yeah. That's such a good insight, honestly. To not view it only as a vehicle for learning, because that's how we started our conversation today. Games as a vehicle to learn, as a vehicle for efficiency, but also as a means in itself. You mentioned the basic need of playing for children, maybe also for adults. I would definitely support that, that we as adults should be more playful and play more as well. Um, Yesterday, I was walking in a park nearby here, and currently we have a lot of snow outside. Uh, and the main attraction in the park were several dogs who went completely crazy about the snow. So they were running and like sliding on their back in the snow. And I think for some of them, it was maybe the first time they experienced snow. So it was really, really a crazy scene. All the dogs sliding on their back in the snow and many many adults around just
Hmm.
observing, and for them it was also like a huge spectacle. And if you think about it, the whole thing doesn't make any sense. So there is no, surplus or extra value or efficiency in watching dogs playing in the snow. um, but at the same time, it was a huge fun for all the humans and for all the animals.
Hmm.
And there is no deeper meaning than just, as you say, the fun, or the the shared moment together. So
Yeah.
I find it really, really nice how you frame that to say, in the end, you will probably have a byproduct of more efficiency, like you cracking the code in this manufacturing challenge. But you also have this direct benefit of just having maybe more joy in your life.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah.
Um,
And it doesn't exclude each other.
yeah,
And that's the great thing. You
yeah.
can you can have you can have more fun doing the things that you need to be doing, like your taxes or whatever.
I will have to
I
think
need to
about how to
work
make
on
my
that.
taxes more funny. I try. I just started this year. So far, it's not so fun. But now you you convinced me. Maybe I can be more playful.
You just need to create some kind of a challenge or
Yeah.
something like that.
My tax advisors and especially tax authorities are usually not so playful. But I will try my best. Nice. Johannes, thank you very much for that conversation. It was very insightful. And as you said before, talking about it, um, putting the theory into a practical discussion already made me learn a lot of things. I hope our listeners too. And I really look forward to seeing more of your work and all the things you do around playfulness.
Same here. I always enjoy our conversations very much,
Thank you,
and I look
Johannes.
forward to the next one. Thank you very much.